So we'll bring on a gambling expert here from Fox Sports who can help with some picks NFL divisional weekend. Let's welcome in Chris the Bear Fallica. He does the Bear Bets podcast with Jeff Schwartz. He's on Fox Big Noon Kickoff. Bear, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. We're exactly 5 weeks removed from shoulder replacement surgery, so we're doing okay now. We're allowed to be out of the sling at home, and I'm out driving now, which is a good thing, and I can get back and do a little walking on the treadmill and getting on the bike there. So I'm in a good place right now mentally.
Shoulder replacement, that's big to know. So you're getting healthy. Matt Leinart here at Fox, wishing him a speedy recovery from hip surgery. Everybody's got to get healthy.
Had his knee. I just found out this morning. Dockich had his knee replaced a couple of weeks ago. So between Leinart, myself, and Dockich, we have the three old aging, broken down men. This is great.
My goal is to stay healthy playing hoops this weekend. All right, let's get started. NFL. Listen, Bear, this is a tough weekend. I think we've got a little bit of recency bias with people liking Houston and public coming in on the Packers against the Niners. I kind of like the big favorites. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think I like in this weekend in the NFL to kind of like what we see in the first and second round of the NCAA basketball tournament, where you get that upset in the first round, like Princeton beating Creighton last year, a couple of years ago. Murray State, I think, they beat Kentucky, I think, in the first round. In the second round, they played Florida State, and there was a short number, and Florida State absolutely blew them out. Last year, remember, Princeton second round, Creighton absolutely ran away with that game late in the second half. It's that realization, like, I don't want to say the bill comes due, but people, they're a little late to the party. So I think in that second round game, you see the cream rise to the top, but I think that's the case here. I mean, there are numbers that go showing back since the wild card came into place, like teams that win that wild card game as like a touchdown underdog or bigger typically don't go on and win or even cover in that second game. So that's a trend that I don't necessarily want to always rely on. But if you do necessarily like Baltimore or you like San Francisco, that's just another little bit of evidence to lead you to believe that these teams that are the number one seed, we kind of forget how good they are because they haven't played and maybe they rested people the final week of the regular season. I think that's what we're up against. But of those two big favorites, I like the 49ers more than I do the Ravens. I think the fact that they were able to get Purdy and CMC and Trent Williams and Bosa and Warner and all those guys a little bit of rest and get a little bit healthier in that final week, I think that will be big. I think Shanahan's done well on his home field in the playoffs. And while I am not, I am not discounting anything Green Bay has done. But if you do go back to a couple weeks before the end of the regular season, that defense gave up 30 points to Carolina, who didn't score a point in their final two games after that. Like, I would just think that Green Bay, with all those healthy weapons now at home, kind of will be out to kind of, hey, remember, we're still the one seed in this league, and we're still pretty good. So I do like San Francisco minus the points here. And I actually got in on their team total, which was 30.5 as well. So I am on the Niners. I am on Niners team total over in that game.
I'm with you 100%. I want to ask you, like, one of the things that's helped me this season is kind of looking at the coordinator matchups and the schemes. And I look at McDonald, the defensive coordinator of the Ravens. First of all, I didn't know he was 36 years old, but he has done an unbelievable job bottling up the Shanahan offenses. 49ers, I mean, Brock Purdy struggled, 4 picks. And then against McDaniel and the Dolphins, like, they couldn't move the ball in the second half. It was a bloodbath. And I just wonder, Slowick comes from that tree. McDonald, does he have the answer for the Shanahan offenses and the young kid Purdy? I'm sorry, not the young kid Purdy. The young kid Stroud going on the road against a guy who's really done well against that offense. I think the Ravens are the side.
It would not surprise me. I think of those two big favorites, I would lean towards Baltimore being more likely to be in a game, just because I look at CJ Stroud and nothing has fazed this kid. Yeah. He's used to playing in bad weather in Columbus when he was at Ohio State. He played great on the big stages. And I think the biggest thing for Houston is going to be what happens when Lamar breaks tendency, when he avoids the rush and he has the ability to take off. Are the Texans linebackers and second safeties good enough to be able to spy him, contain him from those big improv plays like he had, remember, just before the half against the 49ers, which really busted that game open. But of these two games, and I heard you talk in previous segment, like, I think there's a lot of pressure on Lamar in this game. I mean, he's aware of it. He's talked about how I have to go win a Super Bowl now to kind of quell this conversation about not being able to win the big one. I think the Ravens are really, really good, but at the same time, I have a ton of respect for the job D'Amico Ryans has done and the way that defense has gotten after quarterbacks this year. It would not surprise me if we look up in the fourth quarter and this is the one possession game.
Boy. Listen, I know you don't get swept up in the social media stuff. We're a little older than the guys who sit on social media all day, but there is this narrative on social media that geez, Lamar can't win in the playoffs. Cam Newton, he struggled in the playoffs. The dual threat quarterbacks kind of get bottled up in the playoffs. I don't know. Do you think there's something there? Is it just too small a sample size for anything?
I think it's too small of a sample. I mean, Jalen Hurts got to the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, great point.
I mean, Colin Cowherd got to the Super Bowl. I think it's a small sample size, and it's just maybe a matchup type thing. And remember too, I think the biggest thing, it was one of those games with the Ravens was the Titans game, who Tennessee was an underdog in that wildcard game, won, and then wound up beating Baltimore right in the divisional game. So I think it's a matchup thing, and I wouldn't get too worked up with that little narrative. I mean, we come back here on Monday and talk about how great Lamar was and how they absolutely went up and down the field on the Texans, and be having a completely different conversation. Come Monday.
Would you say there's more pressure on Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, who has really not broken through? This is his chance to beat Mahomes, finally gets the game at home. I don't know, Lamar or Allen, more pressure?
I think more pressure. I'm gonna hedge it here, and I hate being wishy-washy. I think individually there's more pressure on Lamar. But as a team, I think there's more pressure on Buffalo because you finally get Kansas City on your home field in the playoff. And if you don't beat them now, when are you ever going to beat them? Like from Jeff Schwartz, who I host the pod with, he's going to the game. For people he's dealt with up there, like in Baltimore and spoken to, or Buffalo rather, they're treating this like the Super Bowl. Like there is an immense amount of pressure on that entire team to get over the Kansas City playoff hump here and get to the AFC Championship game. So I think it'll be tough. I mean, they're so beat up defensively, but at the same time, people need to get the narrative and the preconceived notion out of their head about this being, remember 42-36, I think was the score a couple years ago in an unbelievable game. Like, this is not that. This is a Kansas City offense where Patrick Mahomes doesn't really have any wide receivers he trusts outside of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. This is a Buffalo team now where Gabe Davis is out, and they really don't have a ton of wide receivers as well. They're more of a run-based and getting the ball to Dalton Kincaid as well. So this is going to be a lower-scoring game. Like, I don't know who I really lean to in this game. Inclination is Buffalo because I think with Allen, his ability to make some plays with his legs, and I think I think at home, I think that's a massive deal. But I think the biggest play, like if you're looking for a bet in this game, I would either play under 45, I think is the total in this game. It might have gone down a little bit because I don't think they're going to be a ton of points. Or look to the quarterbacks. Look at their rushing totals and go over because you saw Allen have the big touchdown run in the game against Pittsburgh. And Mahomes, it looks like their best play at times because he doesn't trust those wide receivers and nobody can get open, is him just simply taking off and running with the ball. So I would look towards those quarterback runs going over the total as a play I like in that game.
I like those. You brought up Mahomes, so let me ask, what's wrong with Mahomes this year? I don't want to hear the drops. I don't want to hear, they beat Miami last week. All his numbers across the board are career lows. His Pro Football Focus numbers for deep ball passing are among the worst in the league. Like 6 picks, tied for the lead with turnover-worthy plays. Like something just feels off, and it can't just be the receivers and Kelce diminishing a little bit, can it?
I think it can. I mean, look at last week. He threw 2 perfect balls to Mecole Hardman, and Hardman's looking around trying to find the ball and couldn't do it. He just doesn't have anybody he trusts. I mean, I think like MVS, I think he's targeted like twice in the last 3 weeks because he just doesn't trust him. I mean, Kadarius Toney issues are him lining up. He certainly has trouble hanging on to. I think Rashee Rice is the only wide receiver that he has that he actually trusts. If these guys can't get open, it's certainly going to cause lower completion percentage, more interceptions if he doesn't have bigger windows and more open guys to throw the ball to. So I think that's another reason why I think in certain circumstances, he's just going. I mean, losing McKinnon was a big deal. Like he's someone who caught a lot of balls out of the backfield. So I just think the weapons aren't there. And that's why I think you're going to see a lower scoring game again, because he had Juju Smith-Schuster, who he had a good rapport with. He's had guys in the past outside of like the number one type of guys, but they've been trying a lot this year, and they just have not been able to make it work.
All right. Anytime I talk to somebody, first question, like, what's your best bet of the weekend? And you told me it was involving Tampa and Detroit. It feels like this is a tough game to pick, but who you got in this one?
I like Tampa plus the points here, and I know the regular season, Jared Goff had a good game down there in Tampa, but if you look at that box, it was 10-6 late in the third quarter in that game. So while Detroit was moving the ball, they weren't able to capitalize on those drives and the big plays that they had. And I think what we saw last week from Tampa with Baker Mayfield throwing the ball, he looked so much better. They had struggled the final couple of weeks of the regular season, not scoring an offensive touchdown. But against dead team walk in Philly last week, they looked unbelievable. And we certainly know that the Lions give up a bunch of big pass plays. They did last week again. Certainly, I don't think anyone's equating Mike Evans and the Tampa receiving core to what Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp can do, but they have guys who can make plays. And on the flip side, I worry about, like I said, Goff had a good game first time around, but if he isn't able to make those big plays, if they do get to him this time with Todd Bowles bringing different looks and trying to confuse him, that could be a problem. I mean, you see him drop back and he makes some bad decisions at times, and he throws some picks. So I think that Tampa defense will ultimately make a couple of big plays and get to Goff just enough to force a turnover here or there. And he's not going to throw for 350 like he did the first time around. And I do think Tampa will score points and do just enough to hang around in this game. And it wouldn't shock me at all if they went up there and won. I mean, how crazy is that? Like, you had told me before the year that either Jared Goff or Baker Mayfield would be in the NFC Championship game. I mean, the Lions were a trendy team going into the year, but for these two teams to be sitting here one step away from probably a trip to San Francisco, one game away from Super Bowl is pretty incredible.
I guess the last one, Chris, and gamblers, they play the numbers, right? You're not supposed to play the team or the quarterback. You play the numbers. I don't know, man. You can't put a number on it, but Detroit basically won their Super Bowl against the Rams. It was the revenge game against Stafford not revenge, but, Stafford was our guy. Yeah. The first home playoff game since the Ice Age. And it's like the come down. They were partying like 3 nights later in Detroit. Like, I don't know what the scene's going to be like. Is the team exhausted? Is there a weight off the franchise's shoulders and they lay an egg here? Is that possible?
I don't know if they'll totally lay an egg, but I appreciate that analogy. I mean, it being that it is the playoffs, I would expect them to come back. But I mean, that's something that I like in college football, where either a team has a massive win against a big-time opponent, or they pull a huge upset, and there's going to be a natural letdown the following week. But with the stakes so high in this game and a chance to go to the NFC Championship, I think maybe there might be a little bit of a slow start here or there.
No,
or maybe it's a little dulled atmosphere at first, but I think once that game gets going, I think ultimately they'll be fine.
Love it. All right, Chris Fallica, Bear Bets podcast here at Fox. Thank you, Chris. Enjoy the weekend and the games, buddy.
You got it, Jim. You do the same.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.